Welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike Muncer, and as ever, I am your host. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre, one subgenre at a time. And we are right at the end of our 10th season, exploring the evolution of nature biting back in horror. This is part 36, and this week it's a little bonus review, really. It's a bonus discussion. I let the patrons decide what movie that we didn't discuss in depth this series they would like to hear covered. There were a load of great choices. We ended up putting it to a vote. There were several other films that people could have voted for, including Children of Men, The Shallows, Watership Down, Orca, and a whole bunch of other really interesting movies. But the winner with the most votes was Jordan Peele's Nope from 2022. Such an interesting choice for this particular season. So I sat down and chatted to friend of the pod, Devon Taylor, about Jordan Peele's Nope and where it fits in the Nature Bites Back subgenre. Enjoy. A big welcome back to Devon Taylor. Hello, Devon.
Hello, Mike. Thank you for having me back. It's been what a journey this Nature Bites Back series has been, coming to the epic conclusion. I think this was a very perfect pick for a very big ending for the season.
I know, right? This was a little bonus extra. Our patrons got to vote for another film that they wanted to hear discussed this season. I think they've made a good choice here, Devon. Like a slightly left field choice, one I wasn't expecting, but I'm quite excited to discuss it with you.
Yeah, because you usually have like a good curveball or two, somewhere in the season, but this one definitely, I think it makes a lot more sense. It's like when you say it out loud, it's like, wait, Nope, and the Nature Bites Back.
Yeah.
But then whenever you look at it, it's actually like not that crazy at all. It actually makes complete sense.
Totally, yeah. I'm excited to get into that with you, actually. I think it's going to make for a good discussion. First of all, Devon, how are things? You are a busy man with many, many podcasts, and I know you've just recently launched a new podcast with friend of the pod, Zoe Rose Smith, right? Tainted Love. How's that been going?
Yes, of course. February, kind of perfect timing to really get us out there as far as being in the relationship podcast game and whatnot. And,
yes.
So yeah, definitely very apropos. We've been very in the mood and everything. So so that show has been going really great. It's a really nice kind of switch up from my usual show where we kind of, we do a lot of movie stuff, but me and Zoe, we get into some real vulnerable nitty gritty stuff as well, as far as like the personal relationship side. So it's a really, Tainted Love's a lot of fun.
Love that. Well, I'm very excited. Thank you for being here. I know you're a very busy man. You've got a lot of podcasts on the go at the moment. So thank you for being here. So let's get straight into it, shall we? We're going to discuss Jordan Peele's Nope from 2022. Devon, just start us off. Give us a little quick plot synopsis of Nope.
Yeah, this one was actually a little bit harder to come up with a nice succinct one than I thought it would be. But when a bad miracle leads to the death of their father, OJ and Emerald need to maintain their famed horse training ranch. When they realize their tragedy was caused by an otherworldly creature, OJ and M are determined to capture it on camera for potential fame and the opportunity to come face to face with a creature the world has never seen.
Oh, lovely. That was a nice succinct synopsis, given that there's quite a lot going on in this movie, right? It's quite a big, ambitious movie. What do you think of it? First of all, Devon, what's your kind of history with this movie, and what do you think of it generally?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I love rewatching stuff, and that's of course, like when you watch stuff and take notes for a podcast, you like kind of watch things differently. But I've always kind of been that way, and so like I love when a movie grows on me. Like kind of initially compared to Peele's other films, I remember the first time I saw this, I thought this was his weakest, and I was apprehensive. I was a little harsh on it, not gonna lie. I looked at my very first review for it, and I was like, oh man, I was being a little mean. Not that I gave it like a bad score, but I was just like, I felt shortchanged in some way. But with each subsequent watch and then covering on Spectre Cinema, and each time I've rewatched it, just kind of keeps going up and up. So it started off as a 3.5, and then it was a 4, then it was a 4.5, and this most recent rewatch, it's a 5er now. I think this is actually my favorite of Jordan Peele's films. So I've had quite a turnaround. I just get something more out of it with each one, or the different context. Very apropos to the last time I was here on the show. It was like after I like really found my love for Twister, I also started appreciating this film more, and we'll get into that comparison a little bit later. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this film. I think it's working on so many levels. The performances, the ensemble is fantastic. The story is deceptively simple. Like, I think that's the kind of thing with Nope. As I kind of saw people's reviews, people were hung up on so many like little details and the things. What does the shoe mean? It means nothing. Spoiler alert. The shoe literally means nothing. So just like stop wasting your brain power on that, you know? So it's a deceptively simple film that like once you like kind of take in all the bigness of it and epicness, and then when you can kind of then like focus in once you're past the spectacle, take a drink every time we're going to say that this episode. And then once you can appreciate that, it's just such a great film on a filmmaking level, like, you know, inventing new camera techniques for this, and the way that the sound and the score and the visuals come together, and giving us a alien creature design that we've never seen before, is quite impressive. So there's just this movie has so many things going for it, and still has, you know, the kind of deeper, more socio-political stuff to it that Get Out or Us has, but I think not as heavy-handed on it compared to those films. So I feel like maybe that's part of the reason it's kind of rose to the top as being one that I can still watch on like a super fun level, but then also you know, looking in and finding details and coming up with theories and things like that.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm right there with you. When I this was only the second time I've watched it, actually, and watched it at an early press screening. I was so excited because I love Jordan Peele so much, and I enjoyed it, but not as much as I maybe wanted to. And I think I was the same as you. I probably would have gone for a roughly kind of 3.5 score for it on that first watch. And there was still a lot that I loved, particularly on the big screen. But I came out kind of less enthusiastic than I was about Us, or particularly Get Out. And actually, I've thought about it a lot since watching it in 2022, and I'm really glad to have come back to it a second time. I had an excuse to come back to it this week. I've got to say, and everyone has said this, you've said this yourself, Devon, like, I loved it that much more watching it a second time, actually. Like, knowing what I was in for, knowing what kind of a movie this was, what kind of a story he was telling. Because maybe it was expectations or something, I don't know. Like, in a way, this movie is a little bit less of an out-and-out horror movie too, right, than Get Out and Us. It's got that kind of big monster movie kind of spectacle, but it almost feels like more of a kind of adventure movie or something, particularly in that final act when they're trying to, you know, get the perfect shot and everything. There's a little bit less of that, you know, compared to something like Us, which has that real kind of home invasion dread, I suppose. This is doing something really different. And again, you know, that incredible spectacle, the kind of sparseness of it as well. And I think you're right about it being deceptively simple. I think being a Jordan Peele movie and being quite big and long in its runtime, I think I was constantly kind of going, what's he doing here? What's he doing here? How is this relating to this and this relating to this? And I think you're absolutely right, actually. It is telling a deceptively simple story in a very epic way, I guess, right?
It's a lot of movie.
It's a lot of movie.
This is like one of those ones where you like look at and you're like not only just the length, like it's a very dense movie. It also like has like, you know, such highs and lows throughout it as well, and this energy, like it's just a lot of movie to like kind of take in initially, especially like, you know, whenever it first came out, seeing it in 70 millimeter and IMAX, like, I mean, this is just a lot of movie for you. So I think once you've then like kind of absorbed it, then it's like, oh, okay, like this, you know, this is what's going on here. This is what he's saying here. And it comes together just like, it's one of those ones where I love a movie that, I mean, obviously I think you want this for most movies, but like there's something very satisfying when you watch a movie and everything culminates like in the final shot, like the like last moment, like not just the last scene, like everything comes together in like one moment right at the end. And it's like, kind of perfect.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, this is the thing about his movies, right? They're so smart, I think, as well. And they are the sorts of movies, even a film like Get Out, which on the face of it feels pretty simple in that it's saying what it's saying in a quite on the nose way, but actually that is a movie that really also rewards repeat viewings. There are subtext and there are lines with double meanings and there are performances that are doing two things at once that you really come to appreciate the more you watch that movie, and I'm sure it's the same with this film as well. What do you think generally of Jordan Peele as a horror filmmaker, Devon?
Yeah, I mean, it's been so awesome watching his kind of journey as a filmmaker and as a producer. And like, I still remember when Get Out got announced and everybody's like, from Key and Peele, the sketch comedy guy, is doing horror now. And then it turns out to be one of the most intellectual horror movies of the century, which is, and then just the fact that he has, in only 3 films, he's established such a great and distinct directorial voice. He's really a craftsman. Which is kind of crazy because like Key and Peele, obviously, it's like I knew he could write. Like I was like script stuff, I'm never gonna be worried about him. Like just with each film, and specifically Nope, is just like every time I'm more and more impressed by his filmmaking prowess. Like he really knows how to compose a shot. He really knows. I think he really does pacing really well. I think he knows how to structure his films in a particular way and then bring something new, whether it's a new kind of thrilling sequence, whether it's finding new ways to interweave his comedy with his horror, or going outside his wheelhouse and like having this giant CGI monster and shooting these, big epic things with, shooting on film and these different cameras and things like that. Like he's really impressive as a filmmaker. Just like he really knows the craft. He really knows how to do it very well. So it's like when you have all that, he can kind of plug in whatever story, like I love how all of his films are, obviously still have these outlandish things to them, but still remain pretty grounded. Yeah. We actually just did a movie commentary on Us a few days ago. And rewatching that, and it's like, this is a silly pants narrative. It truly makes zero sense. And it's like, if you pull it even too much, then it comes completely undone. But it's one of those films that's just like, hey, like, just don't touch it then. Just watch it, like, don't pull the string, too much. Just enjoy it. And when you kind of do that, so it's like, I think he understands, like, how audiences watch movies, how we kind of process those. So it's been a really cool evolution to watch him. And now, we're to the point, it's just like, we're like, all right, what's next? Like, what's the next thing that's coming? And he's so good.
He's amazing. And, I remember that wave around 2017, 2018 of kind of new horror voices that we were suddenly being introduced to. Jordan Peele in amongst people like Robert Eggers and Ari Aster.
Which they're all on the same pace for the number of films they've done. I have a list specifically that's Ari Aster, Robert Eggers, Jordan Peele, and Brandon Cronenberg. Because I consider those 4, they're like in their like own like kind of current class, along with like people like Juliette Ducournau or Coralie Farge as well. I consider them like they are like the new guard for me as far as like who we kind of look at to shape horror currently. So it's interesting that the pace they've all kept.
I agree. And they are. And like with all of those guys, a new movie by one of them becomes almost like an event, right? And obviously that's going to happen in horror circles. But I think what's amazing as well is that Nope, I remember at least here in the UK, I'm pretty sure in the US as well, it was one of the biggest grossing kind of horror films of 2022. And when you looked at what other movies kind of made as much money as Nope, they were the big franchise movies, they were the Conjuring type films, or at least movies with kind of like big properties behind them or big names behind them like Stephen King. And what I find amazing is that after 3 movies, Jordan Peele himself can open a movie, right? Like, in a way, this movie, I mean, Daniel Kaluuya and some of these other actors are kind of big, but they're not like huge household names. But Jordan Peele himself is almost becoming that kind of Alfred Hitchcock type persona, I think, where we associate him with a certain type of movie. He kind of authors the movie himself, in stuff like The Twilight Zone. Of course, he appeared on screen a lot. And
we've come to know and appreciate Jordan Peele as a brand almost at this point, I think, right? Where he himself kind of opened a movie like Nope and it grossed so much money, I think just because of him, really.
Oh, yeah. Like, it is kind of crazy, how much credibility he's already acquired. And again, like, and then it extends into his producing. Like, how many, movies now he has his own production company, and then seeing a trailer poster from the mind of Jordan Peele, even to a detrimental degree, because it is kind of annoying. Like, I remember everyone thought Candyman was him until like a month before the movie came out. They're like, oh wait, no, there actually is another person here. Good and bad, but also like, like he very much is like one of those people. He can put his name on something, and that's gonna conjure in a crowd, but also, like you said, like kind of already generate an idea of what kind of project you're going to see.
I love it. So this is a movie that, and again, I think we learned from Get Out and Us that you say that his movies are like, they're very kind of socially conscious movies, I guess. What would you say? You kind of gave us a little summary of what happens in this movie, right? What the plot is. But what's this movie really kind of about for you, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, and if I'm bringing it into like a social context, it's, we are kind of obsessed with, we are kind of at the height right now of wanting to be seen, but also wanting to see everything. We want to see the new thing, what's the attention span of people now, because it's like, we want to see the new thing. We want to see the thing first. We want to see something that you've never seen before. So there's just so many things. So it's like, whether it is, filming a horse on a jockey on a horse, a sitcom, a movie, like, we want to see something, I go into every movie, hoping I see something I haven't seen in another movie. But in general, like, there is just this constant hunger for wanting to be seen, and it's innately human. Like, it's not a bad thing, because I think it is just in our nature and instincts. It's just one of those things, because that's kind of where the parallels come in with the animals. And like, as much as we want to train something, or we know, enough information about something, as much as preparation as we can do, we don't know. Like, there's still always going to be an ounce of unpredictability for something to just revert to its instincts, like to ignore kind of everything else. So there's, I think in this pursuit of, capturing things on film, or wanting to be seen, or the fresh new thing, you guys still do it in ethical ways. And, one thing that we do is exploit animals. We have been doing that for 100 years, there's a reason that, Gordy is a chimp in here. We talk about, the dancing monkey. Like, we love to, so like, there's been something very ingrained in that. And then also horses. I think horses are one of the most longest exploited animals of all time, because we needed horses for settling and establishing civilization. Like, horses are kind of like a big pillar of, culture and society. So like, even specifically focusing on a chimp and a horse is very specific in which animals that we are exploiting, but it's just something that we've always done. So and so that's kind of where my mind goes to, is just kind of playing on the natural curiosity that we have to want to observe things. And again, like, we go into a theater and we're expecting a spectacle. So like, that's kind of the way that we approach so many things in life.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's such a perfect way to put it, really, because you mentioned at the beginning of this chat, we're going to use the word spectacle a lot. It's a movie with a lot of spectacle. Like you said, it's shot 70mm IMAX. Like, it's this beautiful looking film, but it is also about that, right? He's used the medium to actually tell a story about our obsession with looking, right, and our obsession with spectacle and watching things and appreciating things, but appreciating things for art, and then what that means, right, and also exploiting things for art, whether that is animals, creatures, human beings, whatever. Throughout history, like you say, we have exploited stuff for spectacle, and this movie's kind of doing that too, right? But it's also kind of reckoning with that at the same time. I think that's really interesting. And apparently, he kind of partly got the idea for the film. He was writing it in lockdown, I think, right? And he was kind of at this point when we were all very much stuck indoors, and Jordan Peele was stuck stuck indoors, and I think he very much wanted a movie that kind of explored the vastness, the openness of the world, right? He wanted to look up at the sky, I think, and be in an open space, especially after the few years that we'd had. So I think that's really interesting too, that it's almost like it's not so much a COVID movie, it's kind of a post-COVID movie in a way, you know?
Yeah, no, there's 2022 was such a fascinating year because I feel like that was the we didn't stop making movies 2020 and 2021, but they definitely slowed down quite a bit. There were a lot of stuff like put on hold, so like there was a moment in like late 2021 where it was just like it felt like there was just nothing. Like and again, we need new, like, you know, rewatching our favorites is enough, we need the new stuff. So it was like there was a point where just things had slowed down so much I was just like, are we gonna get some movies? So it's like 2022 was a year where we're seeing films that are being made now back on like kind of their usual size, and with, you know, the new COVID things in place, you know, for filming and stuff. So like so the films that we're seeing in 2022 are, yes, like these are like the true like kind of post COVID films of like, okay, this is how we are making films now, and we've had to kind of change that. But then the film is a send up to, you know, filmmaking in general, you know, and kind of the history behind it. So even though it is still like tying into something very current, it is still like kind of like, hey, let's go back to our roots and like, why do we, you know, enjoy film? Why, like, what is it that draws us in so much about it? It's contemporary, but also a nice homage to just like kind of, you know, 150 years of filmmaking.
I love it. So we're introduced to our two main characters, OJ and M, right? Brother and sister, Keke Palmer, Daniel Kaluuya. And they have kind of taken over their sort of family or their father's business, right? In terms of sort of providing their sort of horse handlers for film productions, essentially, right? What do you think of these two as our main characters and these performances? Because again, like Daniel Kaluuya, who I think is incredible, it's a very kind of understated performance, isn't it, from Daniel Kaluuya in this movie?
I love them. This is like one of my favorite portrayals of siblings in horror. Like, I think M and OJ are so great in their depiction, the way they're written, the little bits of dialogue, like they have like the kind of, you know, pieces of their own language, they have their own, you know, kind of looks and things, but like, and these dynamics, you know, they bicker quite often throughout the film, but there is such a love that is undeniable. Like, you know, that these two care deeply about each other, and the chemistry between Palmer and Kaluuya is fantastic. Kaluuya, one of the best eye actors that we have in current day.
Oh,
like,
my God.
He literally can do more with his eyes than like most people can do with their entire body. Like, he is such a commanding screen presence, and it balances so perfectly with Keke Palmer, who has, you know, always has this very bright, explosive energy behind her. I still don't think we've even tapped into the full potential of Keke Palmer. Like, she's pretty big, but like, I feel like she should be like a mega star and like in like 7 movies a year. You know, so it's like, I think pairing them together is really good. And, you know, so much of, you know, again, like the movie is about, you know, respecting your roots and kind of the thing. So it's like they're trying to uphold, you know, the ranch. You know, OJ wants to keep it going for their dad's sake. M is like, hey, we're kind of getting phased out. Let's move on. Let's, you know, and kind of. And they're both coming out from understandable area. So the fact that then this, you know, crazy event, you know, is kind of what brings them together to like kind of meet on equal grounds as they like kind of take on this situation together. They're so fantastic. They're so fun to watch. Like, I remember the first time watching, and whenever they like hit that like perfect handshake whenever Antlers walks up, I was just like, oh man, I was like, that was just like, that's just too good.
The handshake is incredible. I agree. They're so funny, these two. There's so much heart between them as well. I love the little motif thing they do where, you know, his eyes meet her eyes, right? And he's kind of that kind of, I got you, I see you kind of a look that they give each other as well throughout, and which obviously also links to their kind of backstory as well. Like, I love it. I think you're right. I think they've got so much chemistry, and they match each other's, or they sort of, I guess they balance each other's energies so well, don't they? Because he is, again, he has all of about 20 lines of dialogue probably in this whole film, right, Daniel Kaluuya? But again, like you said, he almost doesn't need more than that because he is such an astonishing physical actor, particularly with his face. And we learned this in Get Out, of course, but with his face and with his eyes, he can do so much with so little.
There's something very fascinating about his character. Like he doesn't talk a bunch. When he does, he maybe strings at most 5 words together. Like it's like very like we're covering this in Black History Month right now, and there's not too much representation of like Black neurodivergent people, and like there's nothing said or anything confirmed in the movie, but it's kind of one of those things like, when it's like, oh yeah, no, I totally understand how this guy's brain is working. And that was something that I felt I hadn't gotten to see in a film very often. So yeah, I think Kaluuya's performance of OJ, I know he got nominated for Get Out, but I think this performance is even better. Like there's something, he's just got like an extra something, like like when you're watching him, you can always tell that the gears are turning, and he's always thinking on something very intentional. So yeah, he's doing some real special work here.
I love that. And how much do you think this movie is also kind of exploring that notion of Black history in cinema, right? Because obviously there is this whole bit at the beginning when they talk about basically one of the first movies ever shot, right? Being that jockey on the horse, being the black guy on the horse. But how much is Jordan Peele kind of exploring that side of things in this movie, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's about, again, like recognizing the people that are not seen. Like, I mean, like obviously animal handlers still get credits and things at the end of movies, but nobody's ever thinking about that when they're watching a movie going, oh man, whoever handled these animals did a really great job. Like nobody's really thinking about that, even though it's a very important job to have in film. So I think it's something in that about just, making sure you're recognizing every part that goes into filmmaking. Like I think, we watch a movie and we watch it in our entertainment process, but a lot of people who are not in our like kind of movie space, they don't really think about all like the intricacies of filmmaking. So it's like, it's so easy to throw out a 1-star review on Letterboxd, and it's like, okay, but is it really worth that? Because like, if it's at least a competently made film that came together and was released, like that's already a lot right there. Like movies kind of start off with 2 stars instantly from me, just because I'm like, filmmaking, there's a lot of stuff going on, so
absolutely.
So I think them kind of having this like kind of hidden or secret kind of stake in the early formation of filming, I think is really big. And again, because it's kind of something that would be swept under a rug, or like one of my favorite things is looking up inventions that people don't know were invented by Black people, like the street light. Did you all know that traffic lights invented by a Black man?
No way.
Our roads would be a chaotic disaster without them. So it's like things like that. Like, so it's like, oh, like the first person captured on film was a Black man. Didn't realize that. Like things like that.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of about acknowledgement. Because that is also a big part of the film, as they kind of tie in with Jean Jacket and looking at it. So like there's a lot of things about like kind of acknowledgement.
I was sad not to get more Keith David in this film, right? Who
always
a legend, what a hero, who sadly perishes in the opening scene. Kind of shocking scene, isn't it? Again, beautiful, this kind of spectacle of these like bits of metal falling from the sky, right? And he ends up with I think it's a nickel, right? Like embedded in his brain in the first scene of the movie. Crazy. It's quite a startling image, that.
Yeah, I've always thought about that. I remember like as a kid, they're like, I hear if you drop a penny off the top of an Empire State Building, it'll make a crater at the bottom. It could kill somebody. And it's like, whoa, like that's insane. And you're like, so anytime you're on a roof somewhere, you're like, please don't accidentally drop your drink off the top or something.
Exactly,
so it kind of, it kind of plays on that. And I like, again, the way the movie like kind of unfolds. Like I remember the trailers and promotional materials being very cryptic. Like you had kind of really no idea what was going on. So like this like kind of opening, it's just this like this anomaly, this like kind of just like why are there bits falling from the sky? Did a plane go down? Did like something this, and like and it's just kind of one of those like just very eerie and ominous. It is such a great start. And yeah, Keith David, wish he was in this movie a lot more, but he's really great, because like even in like I like the scene before it happens, like it is just like his really one moment dialogue, and he's talking about like I guess, like, you know, you get context as to like the history of their business. You know, it's like you can kind of feel that like maybe in like, you know, the 80s and 90s when we were using so many more live animals, they were probably like, you know, probably booming and stuff. And you can kind of tell they're, you know, not doing bad. They obviously still have all of this stuff, but like you can tell that like they've been like kind of on down. So he's like just talking to OJ about like, hey, yeah, you know, all it takes is to land this one movie again. It's going to be a franchise. They'll bring us in for the sequels and we're going to be all good, you know, and like, and then just right after he says that, it's like, nope, you are not going to be all good, actually.
Exactly. And actually, speaking of Nope, why do you think this movie's called Nope, Devon?
You know, that's one thing I still haven't really been able to figure out because I kept track of like the times that it was dropped because they do it about 4 times in like key moments. And it's usually, you know, seeing something and then be like, nope, I'm not going to interact with that. So I think it is, again, like going on like this, you know, human instinct. Like you'll see something, I want to look at it, or like you see a interesting creature, even if you don't know what it is, like an interesting bug, people are like, I kind of want to pick it up, you know. So it's like there's things of like kind of always kind of having these urges, and each time they say nope, it's like kind of refusing something, like, you know, like the scare in the barn, and he's just like, nope, not dealing with this. Anybody else would do something, I'm not gonna, you know, things like that.
Yeah, it feels like it pairs really well with Get Out too, right? Like Get Out and Nope, both these phrases that we as audience members will say during a horror film in a movie theater, right? There's something quite playful about it. Nope is probably the word that I've used the most this season as well when talking about animals, when I've spoken to guests about like, why would you go caving? Why would you have gone in the ocean? You know, nope. Those are the things that I instinctly say. Last week we talked about the film Infested, and I think I said aloud the word nope about 20 times during that movie, right? Because it's the natural kind of response to seeing people get put in some of these situations, particularly in a Nature Bites Back season. So yeah, there's something really fun and really kind of playful about that title, I think.
Yeah, it's not. It's funny because I'm on this crusade against 1 and 2 word titles and films. Movie titles are too boring these days, but Jordan Peele does get away with it, that like each one is a simple title, but they have these kind of layered meanings. You could also trade them around, I think is fascinating, because Get Out could be called Nope.
Yeah.
Us could be called Get Out because that's a home invasion thing. And then this could be called Us. You know, like it can all be switched around if you want to, which I think is also kind of fun.
I love that. That's such a good point. Yeah. So you've got these 2 kids who are kind of struggling, I guess, with, like you say, to kind of make ends meet, raise money. And OJ has started selling some of their horses to this kind of theme park, right, that's just around the corner from their ranch, Jupiter's Claim, right, run by this character called Jupe, played by Steven Yeun, who has a kind of really interesting backstory and quite an interesting kind of place in this movie, right? What do you think of him and his kind of role within this film?
Steven Yeun fucking rules. I love him. I think he is such a great actor. Another actor I don't feel like we're using enough currently.
Totally.
And his character is so fascinating because he is like kind of separate with all the stuff with, like the stuff with Jupe, and he's the one that ties in with the Gordy's home, which is like a whole subplot. And it's fascinating because like there's another movie that follows Jupe that, like, you know, because he made the discovery weeks ago, you know, prior to the events of the film. He's already been having this whole thing where he's been feeding horses to an alien.
Right.
You know, he's already has his own movie going on, and then it like kind of runs concurrently into M and OJ story, and then they kind of take it over as like their stories kind of intertwine. So I think that's very fascinating. I remember like I know some people are like, oh, I could kind of do without the Gordy stuff or without him. And then like, I remember the first time I was almost more interested in his story than M and OJ. But then again, with each rewatch, I just see how their stories kind of merge together. And, you know, coming from, you know, different sides of, you know, the filmmaking areas and things like that. And like, you know, this person that is, you know, kind of, using his trauma to like kind of, you know, do something that he doesn't truly understand. Again, like, you know, we just have these urges to like try to do these things. It's like nobody in their right mind, if they saw like, you know, what they think is a spaceship eat a horse, nobody's gonna be like, you know what? I wonder how I can make money off this. You know, like this guy is not in his right mind, you know, to kind of do the things that he does. But it's so much about like, you know, because he is this like past has been like kind of star, like he's really just coasting off his reputation from the 90s. So he's, you know, he's constantly trying to recapture that spark again and get back to that climax of, you know, being on top of entertainment and things like that. So I think his character ties into the themes of the movie pretty succinctly, actually.
And I love it. I love there's this kind of real old charm to his story too, like running this like kind of weird like circusy theme park type place where it's like gather around everyone and watch this weird creature. Again, like, you know, talking about this in a nature bites back scenario. In some ways, this loops me all the way back to the very first film I covered this series, which is King Kong, right? There is a King Kong vibe about this story, I think, and about using these humans exploiting these giant creatures for entertainment and for money and for capital, right? And they're, you know, both of them, I suppose, in different ways are kind of doing that.
Yeah, it's like when you kind of look at, because when you see like the kind of flashback and it's like, you know, he's working with this chimp and like they like seem to have like this kind of rapport, you know, and like he ends up, you know, making it out of this situation unscathed. And then so between that and then this interaction with the alien, he thinks he is like chosen. He thinks he like there is this specific reason that you know, something bad isn't happening to him, and then that gives him like the clearance to be like, okay, well, yeah, it's not a big deal if I sacrifice these horses and like do this whole thing because I'm chosen. Like this is meant what I'm supposed to do, you know. Versus when he was working on the sitcom, I'm sure he had had a very different relationship with working with a chimp versus, you know, what he's doing now.
Yeah, let's talk about this whole chimp attack backstory then. This character of Dupe, who he was a kind of child celebrity, right? Like back in the 90s, he was in a sitcom with this chimp called Gordy, right? And then famously, this episode of this sitcom that he filmed went very, very badly when I think a balloon pops, right, on set, and it triggers Gordy to just completely lose it. This chimp completely loses it and begins attacking people. It's one of the most kind of overtly, I would say, horrific scenes in the film as well. Like in terms of pure horror, it's quite a tense, sort of dread-inducing scene. This moment where little Dupe is hiding under the table and he can just hear the sounds of people screaming, of people being killed and maimed. There's this really interesting moment then when the chimp and Dupe kind of clock each other. The chimp makes eye contact with him, right? And again, a big kind of running motif of this film is eye contact, is looking at each other, right? And so we have to kind of make note of that moment. The chimp kind of looks at Dupe looks back, the chimp kind of slowly walks over to Dupe, and then there is this kind of fist bump moment where they acknowledge each other. And then, of course, we don't see what happens after that. Would the chimp still have attacked that boy? We don't know, because the chimp is then shot dead by, I guess, the police or somebody, right? But it's really interesting scene, the way that Dupe then is using his kind of childhood trauma and kind of exploiting it, I guess, in a way, right, for commerce now as an adult. But it's really interesting the place that Gordy set piece has in this bigger narrative, right? What do you make of this whole section?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, we're, again, like it's something that we don't think about when we're watching stuff, like how, you know, like how much effort it takes to film something, especially if you're going to do a sitcom where an animal is one of the primary cast members. Like that's there's a lot of things that go into doing that, you know, and in the film, we don't really see the animal wrangler in it, which I think is an interesting choice considering that's part of M and OJ's whole deal. So we don't see that on the set of this show. So it's like, oh, is that already one thing? They didn't have the proper things put in place for something like this to happen. But it also goes to, it's like, you know, you can train it no matter how, you know, oh, we've done 100 episodes with Gordy and he's been fantastic. Nothing's ever happened. All it takes is that one unexpected thing, you know, the one thing he's training, like all it was a balloon pops and that's it. And Gordy forgets his acting training. He forgets what scene he's in and he reverts back to his like kind of most primal form. and kind of, goes on this like panicked attack, because like really he was scared and then fucking just went crazy. So like it again just plays into like this unpredictability of, anything that can go on, especially if you are doing something that involves exploiting an animal in a certain way. And like, hey, you didn't make all the necessary things. You didn't make sure that, this balloon wasn't going to randomly pop, like whatever. Like as many times as you can try to say like, oh, all the conditions were right. We did all the things properly. Just one thing. And all it takes is that. And then it kind of goes off. I remember in the trailer, the way that like you like kind of saw Gordian like flashes and he was like covered in blood. I remember being like, oh, is this the alien that we're thinking of? So like whenever you watch it and this is kind of a whole separate thing, it's like, oh, I was not expecting this. So it's like, it's definitely like one of those unexpected narrative subplots. But again, I think it does tie in very well because again, it has this moment where Jupe is like, okay, I'm not going to let that moment happen again. But at the same time, he's like, it rewires something in him that, again, like, allows him to do the actions that he does later.
For sure. Yeah, I love that. And I think, yeah, you're right. And I think it's a really clever mix of your kind of sci-fi alien film, because that's what it is essentially, right? This is, and we haven't really got properly yet to the UFO and everything, but it is a sci-fi horror at its heart. But it does treat this monster actually more like an animal than like something more science fiction-y. We don't really know where this creature has come from, what it ultimately wants, right? And there are way more parallels to this creature being treated more like an animal, like the horse who freaks out when it gets looked at, or like the chimp, and it is like, I think Jordan Peele is very much sort of drawing those animal parallels to the alien itself, I think.
Oh yeah, I think it is one of the most unique portrayals of an alien I've seen in a film, because so much we often are like, oh, aliens are humanoid, they're highly intelligent, they're this, they're that, and we always kind of make these assumptions about like what aliens are truly like. So I like that he takes a more alienistic approach or an animalistic approach to it. I love the fact that like we think it's like, oh, we're looking at the UFO and the aliens are inside of it. It's like, no, that is the alien. That's also like another like really cool thing. So it's like, it's so unique. And again, like, yeah, this kind of portraying it as an animal, again, like every time in the films you've been covering, in whenever it's like an animal attack movie, even though it's like, yes, it's super scary and like super whatever, I'm always like, I still always empathize with the creature. I'm like, because that's an animal. The animal is just doing its instinct things. It is doing what comes natural to it. And it's unfortunate that it led to certain circumstances, but like, hey, like that's just what it is. So it's like, I always have this layer of understanding for them. So doing it in this way, I think, because in alien movies we're always caught up in the how, the what, like what are they doing, why are they doing this, and it's like this film isn't really interested in that, and portrays kind of Jean Jacket in this more animal way, to just be like, hey, like this is just something that you're not going to be able to comprehend. You can do your best to comprehend it and make the best of the situation. But you're not going to know because it can't tell you and we can't communicate with it on that level.
Exactly right. It's this complete kind of unknowable thing, isn't it? Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about these kind of alien encounters then. It's really interesting, isn't it? The way that the tension kind of ramps up and the film gets kind of separated into chapters. The chapter headings are named after the horses that are taken or directly involved in the alien attacks each time. But we get this kind of building tension of something is lurking in the sky, and our characters kind of immediately start to think, okay, this is a UFO, right? Or this is some sort of alien creature. And then there is a really interesting, we should talk about the kind of interesting red herring scene, right? Again, a kind of quite more overt horror set piece where Daniel Kaluuya's character goes down to the barn in the middle of the night and we hear something and we see these little figures of these aliens. And I remember seeing it at the press multimedia screening, and people in that moment were scared. There were gasps. There was a lot of like nervous laughter. It felt like we were
watching a scene from M. Night Shyamalan's Signs or something, right? That we were about to watch this alien attack moment. Of course, it turns out not to be that, right? It's a big hoax. It's a bunch of kids dressed as aliens that are working for Dupe round the corner, and he's kind of getting them back for stealing one of his fake horses, right? But it's a really fun kind of set piece that, again, is really kind of playing with those alien movie conventions.
Yeah, because I remember even before stuff was coming out, the images of like, because Jupe like has like plushies of like these like little alien costumes. Yes. Like, so I remember like people had already seen images of that and was like, oh, okay, so yeah, this is what the aliens are going to be like. And that's just, again, like what our brain goes to, because it's like very much like a very stereotypical looking alien, like, you know, with like a white head and these like kind of like skinny eyes and whatever. And it's just like, yeah, because again, like that's what we think. And so again, like kind of playing on our expectations and you know, what we like kind of perceive as what a typical alien would be. So it's a fun little sequence. I love that a little kid gets punched in the face. I think that more kids need to be punched in the face every so often, you know. So I think it's a very funny scene, and yeah, definitely it's the first drop of Nope.
Exactly. That's such a good use of Nope in that moment. It's so good. But of course, yeah, this is when the siblings decide that they're gonna. Basically, when they realize that there is something like extraterrestrial hovering above their ranch, their first instinct is, let's get some good footage of it and become rich, right? And then that essentially becomes like the sort of thrust of the second half of the movie, is that like, are these two going to be able to capture the perfect shot, the Oprah shot, as they call it, right? Like footage that is going to be so good that it's going to be on Oprah, it's going to make them rich and famous. They meet the character of Angel, right, from Fry's Electronics, who ends up becoming kind of part of their gang, who kind of rigs their ranch with security cameras and everything as well, right? Love Angel as well. I love all of these little characters, Devon, and what they bring to it, you know?
Yeah, Brandon Perea was kind of like a relative unknown. Like he was just like in like a couple like TV things. And he is so great in this. He really fits in the ensemble. Every year I give out an award that I call Good Boy of the Year, where there is just a male character that is truly unproblematic, which is rare in horror movies, as people know. He was runner up. He didn't win 2022, but he was up there because he's down for the cause. He wants to help out. He believes them. We don't need to do like any romantic subplot or nothing. Like he's just there, to be in it with everybody, so it's like, and he's like kind of our like, current, contemporary, like kind of view on this, because I love how OJ and M call it the Oprah shot, but it's like that's kind of not really been a thing in a moment. Like that was like 10 years ago when, like you said, like the big thing was like, oh, you get so big that you get invited on Oprah. But like now it's like, I even feel like viral doesn't even have a meaning anymore. Like we just say it, like now it's just, oh, anything can go viral now, versus like, 5-8 years ago, it's like, no, going viral was like a big deal. And so it's kind of interesting having his character like then, kind of tie in, and he's already has all the alien theories and stuff, and being very, very tech based as our current generation is. I think he's really great. He has really great comedic timing. And then he pops up in Twisters. So he's been hanging around the genre natural disaster subgenre, which is fun.
I love that, linking nicely to our last discussion together, Devon, as well. That's great. But yeah, I think that's really interesting as well, what you said about how Angel kind of represents the 2022 element of this, right? Of like, like you say, he's very tech, he's very digital, he knows exactly what he needs to do to capture the perfect footage. But of course, one of the things about this creature, this alien, is that it kind of like, it switches off all electronic devices when it's over it. So then they have to go kind of old school, right? And then we are introduced to this character of Antlers Holst, right? This cinematographer, this kind of like very prestigious, I guess like documentary and commercial cinematographer, who comes with his old like is it a 16 mil camera potential? I don't know what kind of camera it is.
It's like his own camera they made because it's like this like whole hand crank manual so that way it doesn't lose the power. Oh my god, good. Michael Wincott is the scene stealer of this movie. Just every scene that he's in, and the more that he becomes in the movie in like the second act, I'm just like, I love having him around. His fucking gravelly voice, iconic in this. That scene where they're just sitting around the table and he's like telling the people, the purple people eaters, little bit and everything. Like he is really great. Iconic movie name too, Antlers Holst. What?
So good.
That's like, but it's so funny, and like they like kind of show him. He's always in like very drapey, flowy stuff. Like it looks like the artsy cinematographer type guy.
So good. He's like this kind of Werner Herzog type character, isn't he? Like quite serious, quite deep. But also, what I love about him is that he absolutely just like goes with it. Like you kind of think that he's going to be maybe this slightly grumpy, cynical, like not really interested in what these guys want to do, but he just like arrives and is like, yep, I'm gonna get you this, and it's like throws himself into it.
Yeah, because he's also like as far as being like one of the older characters, and you can tell like the way that they talk about him and present him, he is this famous cinematographer. Like he's like supposed to be like one of the best, like but he's like kind of he's up there in age. He's like maybe he hasn't turned out something, because now he's doing cinematography on a commercial for some ad or whatever, so it's like he's kind of had a fall from grace as well. So like whenever M says like, hey, like I know you are looking for a once in a lifetime thing, and I have that. And like, he just buys into that. I love, the little, shout out to like, a very industry term where he's like, whenever they're like, we can't pay you in money. He just goes, I'm in one of those things. I do one them, one for me. It's like, of course he does. Like, so like, I love that that's his, reasoning just to hop on. Like, yeah, sure. It's the one for me. Yeah, I'm doing it.
It's so good. And by the way, FYI, I didn't notice the first time watching it, but on the commercial shoot at the beginning of the film, the director is Oz Perkins, right? Osgood Perkins. Amazing. Loved seeing him there.
Yeah, so random.
Yeah, I know. I love it. But yeah, I think this is where it really feels like this movie ultimately becomes like a love letter to cinema, right? And classic cinema too, like this non-digital type of cinema, right? It really feels like, again, and maybe that partly because the first time I watched this movie, it was on a 70 millimeter, but it really feels like it's Jordan Peele kind of paying tributes to that kind of classic old epic or western or like cinema of yore, I guess, in a way,
Yeah, this like little section where they are working together, they're coming up with all these plans and everything. It feels it's a very nice parallel to the scene in Babylon, like in that first act when they're like shooting out in the desert, and it's like everybody, all these things are happening and people run around, they're trying to chase things by the hour and the time and things like that, and what materials they have. And so, yeah, so like this section, like, after we spend the beginning of the movie, kind of talk about, we go into the 90s sitcom era, and then we see like kind of current commercial stuff. And then again, it's about like, let's go back to the roots of filmmaking. And it's just like, so it's like they're trying to get this, alien shot, but it also feels like, a scrappy indie short film that you do with your friends that, you have a limited budget. Who's got what type of equipment handy? All right, we got 4 of us. We're going to run and gun. We're going to do this thing together. And like, they spend, just the entire day, like kind of doing this whole thing. So it kind of has that feeling of, doing something in film school with your homies, and just like, all right, like, like we got this amount of time, we got to get it from this angle, but then tying that in with this being an animal attack movie, like this is the point where it's like, okay, we're going to make the plans. We're going to, we know its strengths, we know its weaknesses at this point. Like we need to take into account the magnetic, electromagnetic field stuff. It's all, and then like, this is where, the eye contact, the run, of it all. Is just it's very thrilling. The movie gets a lot of Jaws comparisons. Specifically in the structure, because that movie is like kind of 3 distinct chapters. Where it kind of then leads to the people coming together, and then the thrilling chase of it all. So I'd say structurally, it also kind of fits into that.
My God, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. You're so right. Like that last act very much feels like the last act of Jaws, doesn't it? Where the movie has shifted into this kind of almost kind of swashbuckling adventure of these guys catching this thing, like catching this this Moby Dick type creature. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, well, let's talk about the creature design itself then. I mean, you mentioned already how interesting it is, Devon, that it's like, it looks, and for all intents and purposes, seems to be a UFO, a classic kind of almost flying saucer, but then it's sort of organic, right? That is the creature itself. And then it kind of shifts and changes form. We get a couple of great moments where we get to see the inside of it as well, while people are being eaten, right? What do you think of it?
Oh, man. Jean Jacket is something else. Like, this design, the design, the characterization, like, this is a very petty creature. It has a personality that I appreciate. Like the fact that it, like, you know, like pukes up blood and guts and like all this stuff on the house because it's mad that it ate the fake horse. Like, you know, like, so like it even has like a personality to them. But like this design, it's so striking. I love, yes, the different phases and evolutions that we see. I saw that it was like influenced by like kind of like what like the old biblical representation of an angel is supposed to look like. This like kind of like formless, like just divinity essentially. It also is as it opens up, it's like very much like an old style camera with like the square apertures and everything.
Yeah.
So it's also an homage to that. It's also like kind of like majestic and vaginal in a way. There's like kind of this like, you know, like there's so many things going on in the design of it. And I think I love, just each little phase that we kind of get all the way through, like, you know, it's like ultimate reveal. It's a kind of like a giant Pokemon a little bit as well. I think this design and is just, I had just never seen anything like it. I was like, that is just a stroke of genius, just to be like, oh yeah, it looks like a ship, but it's not. That's just what it looks like, you know, is so crazy.
And what does it ultimately want, do you think? It's just eating, I guess, right? Ultimately.
So like my theory would be that Jean Jacket got there by accident. I think it's like kind of like one of those situations where there's an invasive species like outside its typical ecosystem, and it gets in there and it fucks everything up in the ecosystem. Like it, you know, throws off the food chain and all the balance within that. So I feel like it's something like that. Like it just accidentally ended up here somehow, and now OJ says it himself, you know, when he starts making these animal comparisons, he's like it's like an animal. It's territorial and it thinks that this is its home. That's it. Like it is marked its territory. It says, this is my hunting, my eating ground, because I gotta eat. This is what I do. I don't think there is like any purpose or ill intent. Again, there is some pettiness for sure. Once they kind of start going back and forth with like, you know, traps and like it, you know, catching on to like what they're doing. It's almost like it knows that they're trying to get it on camera, and it's just like, nope, you can't get me. So like, but I don't think there was like any reason or purpose that it started. It was just like, well, I'm settled in here now. This is my new home, and I gotta get my routine going. That's it. Jean Jacket's on her routine.
That is exactly it. Yeah, I love it. It's so good. And some of those moments, I mean, again, the imagery in this film, Jordan Peele has always been amazing, I think, at conjuring up these almost instantly iconic images, right? Like Daniel Kaluuya in The Sunken Place, the way that just instantly became like a moment, a meme, a cultural touchstone, right? And sort of the same happened with Us too. The way that immediately that became like a Halloween costume, right? Like the red jumpsuits and the pairs of scissors and everything. Like he's amazing at conjuring up these incredible, memorable images. And again, like the imagery in this movie, just the shots of the thing flying around the sky, and that moment you mentioned, Devon, when it kind of rains down literally all of this blood onto the house. I mean, there's just some absolutely incredible visuals and set pieces here.
Oh yeah, that set piece of the house and everything. That's where I felt like started getting some Twister vibes that then carry on throughout the second half of the movie. It's like this like kind of crazy storm, but it's not a storm. It's an alien puking up blood and objects over this house, and it like kind of because, you know, we've had like the cloud imagery and everything throughout. And I'd say like on rewatching, I'd say besides Gordy's attack, like that's like a true like kind of horror set piece in it. Like
totally,
the lighting gets very dark, the rain, kind of a jolt of energy, because that scene kind of comes at a point like we haven't had like we've been like kind of hanging for a bit, and then it's just like, oh, by the way, you're in a thriller right now, and it kind of brings in that kind of darker energy back into the film, and it's just so great. It looks amazing. Hoyt van Tama coming up with these new ways to do day for night as they were kind of shooting this. So like the look and colors are so striking in that scene with the rain coming down when the lightning flashes. It is just stunning imagery.
So good. It's beautiful. Yeah, love all of that. And then of course the whole final like 30 minutes of this movie where they're trying to get the shot, and you mentioned it already, like just the plan that they come up with, and they've sort of gotten an idea of how this creature works. Obviously OJ realizes that essentially you've got to not look at it, right? Like you've got to not make eye contact with it in order to survive. So that, and again, is interesting, kind of bringing back that theme that we've been talking about since the beginning of spectacle, of looking, right, of watching, of observing. Like you've got to keep your head down and not look at it in order to survive. But then also, how do you lure it, and how do you get the perfect shot? And they come up with this amazing, intricate plan. They get some of their footage and they think they're successful, but then there's this moment, right, when the cinematographer is like, Antlers Holst is like, oh, the golden hour is coming up, right, as well. And like, yeah, it's just, all of that stuff is just such a joy to watch. I loved it.
Oh man, on this rewatch, this was the section that I got to where I was just like, I was watching with tears in my eyes, just from OJ's like first run throughout the rest of it, because you're just kind of on this ride now. Like throughout like the last 30 minutes, like there's significantly less dialogue. It becomes like very much just like visually based. It is just this big extended set piece. And just the way that the score from Michael Abels, who kills it on every Jordan Peele film, like I think he is such a big, he's the secret sauce for Jordan Peele movies, because like he really can carry and change the tone to where the film needs it to be. And like the back-to-back score of the first run, and then the track called Pursuit, when Jean Jacket is after M on the motorcycle, like oh my goodness, is like goosebump inducing. And shout out to Tremors with their wavy inflatable man plan. That's like kind of like when they put like the objects out to track the tremors and that. I love me a good plan in a film. In the way that the movie is, again, Jordan Peele is just such a phenomenal director. Everyone is there's multiple things going on. Like M is watching stuff from the cameras in the room and everything, and like kind of being the radio person. You have Antler and Angel over here doing the camera crank and everything. They're dealing with their own issues, running out of stuff, the wind and everything. Angel almost gets sucked up, and he's like having this like whole like little set piece, and then OJ's on the horse doing his thing. He had to make the run and everything. So there's so many like little parts going on, but it works like so just like harmoniously together. And it is so fun to watch.
It's incredible, isn't it? And like you say, there's something really satisfying about the whole thing. Like you say, it's like they've come up with a really good plan, and then we watch him execute it, and there's still enough kind of genuine peril and suspense as well. You get the TMZ journalist arrive at one point as well, which is hilarious, who then bites it. But then all of these like little moments build and build and build, and then it all kind of culminates with this moment where OJ kind of intentionally looks at Jean Jacket, right, in order to save his sister, to draw the monster's attention away. M then goes to Jupiter's claim, and she untethers the huge kind of helium balloon, which is like a giant mascot of Jupe, right, who's like winking, so he's got this big eye. So that obviously attracts the attention of the monster and everything. And like that whole, again, like everything comes together perfectly for, as you said, Devon, like not just the sort of final set piece, but the final shot even, right? Like it just comes together so perfectly.
Yeah, it's so triumphant, you know, like, I mean, like you're just, we've been chasing this thing. We've been chasing this shot for, the previous 45 minutes of this movie. We're like, oh my God, it's like they got it, but then Antler got himself sucked up and took the footage with him, so it's like we don't got that. So now it's like kind of this whole thing, and then you think OJ is dead. I don't know. I still kind of think he is at the end of the movie, but I've seen theories when people, she sees him and like, oh, he survived. I'm like, I don't know, but the movie had never done any kind of like hallucination stuff, so I don't know if that makes sense. But anyways, it's like, so like but at that moment you think he is, so like M is like doing all these things, and it's like, okay, and it's so fascinating that that she, comes up with this plan, like not only to destroy it, but like, remembers the camera in the well with the hand crank again, like kind of an homage to old style photography. So it's like, if you go through all that, are you still going to do it? Is it still going to be worth it? And I like that the movie is like, yes, like still go for it. Like, even if, everything, kind of turns ass up, your movie loses a bunch of money, you go over budget, you're, whatever, is it still worth it to still get the shot? And I love that the movie is like, yes, like still like, so it feels, so triumphant whenever she does that. The iconic Akira slide, is, phenomenal. It's just such and then just like, leaving it again on her face, and like kind of just this look of like, like after all that, like again, we're gonna be okay, which I think, which is very nice. Like, even though like, yes, they, a lot of stuff, craziness happened, but it's like, again, like I like that all of Jordan Peele's movies have happy endings. They do, which is especially for these black characters. Like, black characters typically never either make it through the entire movie, or if they do, they have like kind of the worst aftermath of anyone in the movie. So I love that he stays committed to being like, no, black people are going to have a happy ending at the end of my movies, damn it. And it's very satisfying here.
I love that too. And I think also he does that without it ever feeling cheap either, or without it feeling contrived. Like, he often manages to have it both ways. I think like Get Out is the perfect example of this, where, again, spoiler alert for Get Out, but towards the end of that movie, Daniel Kaluuya's character is fighting physically with one of the villains, right? This horrible racist girl played by Alison Williams, and she's trying to kill him, and so he has her pinned to the ground and he's strangling her. But then at that exact moment when he is strangling her, we see the blue lights and we hear the sirens, and we know that, oh shit, the police are here. They're going to think he's the killer. He's a black man. He doesn't stand a chance, right? And then, of course, the great little twist of that is that, of course, it's not that. It's his friend from the TSA who is here to save him, right? But it gives us this triumphant, joyful ending, but not without that message, right? Not without, like, even just by having that split second where we see the blue lights flashing on his face, and we all collectively in the audience think the same thing, which is, oh fuck, like, so it almost doesn't need to go further than that. Like, the movie has made its point. And I think there's a bit of that too in this movie. There is this feeling that while it's a happy ending, is it really? Like, there's something a bit bittersweet, I think, about it. For a start, like you said, is OJ really alive? There is something that almost feels a bit too good to be true about that moment when he rides through the mist on the horse, like this kind of hero of a Western. It's like, is she actually imagining that? Is he actually dead? And also this whole conceit of wanting to catch an alien on camera, get the perfect shot, and become rich and famous and live happily ever after. Like, is that really going to happen? Even though they managed to get this amazing photograph of this thing in the sky by the end, is that really going to make them loads of money in 2022? Like, are people really going to believe that that's genuine and not a fake, given today's technology?
It is very interesting to think about, because obviously, like, we were kind of in an age, but it's like, I don't know, I guess, again, them trying to be optimistic. That's like, well, we did it the old fashioned way. We got like this, but like all these things. So like, is it going to pay off? And you like, I love how we only just get like a little bit, like as like the police are pulling up to like the scene, like this wasn't, even though they're like out in the middle of nowhere, like things have eventually gotten out by this point, so then they're kind of shown up, and so it's like, there's news people, reporters, whatever. Is it gonna be the fix to it all? Because again, like at the end of the day, they've kind of lost all their horses. That really sucks. Is OJ dead or not? Possibly. So it's like, is it? But including that shot and then just giving you the option if you're feeling optimistic and you go, hell yeah, fuck yeah, of course OJ survived. Why wouldn't he? You know, because the Western hero, they always, make it out in some fashion. So it's like, if you want to choose to believe that and you want the optimism, then it's there for you.
Exactly.
And I can appreciate that.
I love it. What a movie, right? I mean, it is, even talking about it has kind of got me excited to go and watch it again, and I think you're right, going back to one of the very first things you said about this movie. I think it's going to grow and grow and grow in people's opinion, I think. And I think it's going to climb up in people's rankings of not just the best Jordan Peele movies, but maybe the best movies of this decade ultimately as well. I can see it being this kind of slow grower. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, again, it's like so much to take in. I know you had like kind of notes about like the runtime. Is a little too long?
Yeah.
For me, it's like, I get to the end of the movie now and I'm just like, oh man, I want another hour. Like, I don't want to leave the ranch and leave Emerald and OJ. It's like kind of one of those. I made a post about my favorite run times, and like 2 hours, 10 minutes, 2 hours, 15. That's like kind of my sweet spot.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like a really good, enough that we've been able to like live in the world and, really again, endear ourselves to these characters. So like when I think about the film, I'm like, is there anything that I would remove? I'm like, I can't think of anything. Like, I think everything is kind of perfectly in its place and necessary to the film. So it's like in that. So whenever I like, now I've watched it, I think like 4 or 5 times now at this point, and just like it flew by. I was just like chilling. It was just like, oh yeah, like this is like, it's no chore to like return to this. Like you said, like you kind of get excited when you start thinking about some new details.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Basically 3 for 3 here so far from Jordan Peele, right? I'm very excited to. I don't know. He's got something coming up, hasn't he? That he hasn't revealed much information about.
2026 is his next movie, I believe.
And he's always very good at being very cryptic in terms of the marketing and what he reveals about these films. So I'm sure we won't know anything until much nearer the time. But again, like this kind of Jordan Peele brand of just like, like no matter what now, I'm in. I'm 100% in.
Especially, with the kind of drastic political shifts in the past year.
Oh my God,
I think it would be very fascinating to, again, he's very of the times and like kind of reflective. So it'll be interesting to see what he has to say kind of on our current socio-political landscape.
I love it. Out of the filmmakers, Devon, that we mentioned, that you kind of group together almost as like this kind of current trend of filmmakers, Jordan Peele, Ari Aster, Robert Eggers, Brandon Cronenberg, let's say. How would you rank those guys? Who's your favorite of that lot?
Ooh, I mean, I would have... Before Nosferatu, I probably would have put Eggers number 1. Nosferatu, I wasn't a fan, so it kind of brought his batting average down, but he does have one movie up on Jordan Peele. So Jordan Peele and Robert Eggers are like kind of floating pretty concurrently. Like I got a Lighthouse poster right behind me. I love Midsommar is one of my all-time favorites as well. So Eggers, he still might have the slight edge just from those 2 movies, like off the strength of those ones alone. But I would say, Jordan Peele and Eggers at the top. I would say, and I'd say I put Ari Aster and Brandon Cronenberg also on like kind of the same level for me.
Yeah.
Like, they both have ones. Oh, I said Midsommar was Robert Eggers. That's Ari Aster. So on that list, each one of them, like my top 4 is one from each of them. So like they all have like their one that is like, makes the tops of some of my all-time lists.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I agree with you about Robert Eggers. Like, I think he started so strong with The Witch and Lighthouse that I haven't been as impressed with the last 2. And Ari Aster is great, but I get the feeling with Ari Aster that he's less interested in being a horror filmmaker. Like, I feel like Beau is Afraid is kind of moving out of that, and I think he's going to eventually just want to go into kind of sort of art house prestigious dramas, I think, right, more than genre. But I think for me it is Jordan Peele. I think for me Jordan Peele is the king, especially when it comes to these kind of like big popcorn genre movies that also have so much interesting stuff to say at the same time, you know, like he manages to really seamlessly pull off both, I think, which some of those other guys don't maybe quite manage that balance quite so well.
Yeah, I think he's like his films are the most well-rounded in the fact that, like, you know, equal parts of the entertainment, the spectacle, but also stuff to think about and deeper stuff, and being in the middle. You know, he kind of makes blockbuster horror, if that's a thing, if that, you know, because he, you know, makes these like kind of, you know, mid-budget things that are all very successful. They've all done very well at the box office, so it's like he kind of has the best of both worlds on, like, you know, making things that are artistic but also still widely accessible, you know, like people that are not horror heads like us, like they'll go see, oh, Jordan Peele's got a new movie, okay, I'll watch. Like, I'm not into horror, but I like Jordan Peele movies. Like, it's like kind of like, you know, he has even that kind of crossover appeal. So I think he's the most well-rounded of the bunch.
Agreed. Well, there you go. Well, Devon, thank you so much for joining me. This has been such a pleasure. Really fun little bonus discussion to add into the end of this series, and hopefully you'll be back with us next series. But in the meantime, just let people know, Devon, where they can find you and all of your work online.
Yes, thanks for having me to close out the season. I think it was such a nice follow up after Home Invasion was very intense, and then this was a very, very fun season. So congrats on the season itself. You guys can find me on all social media platforms at _DaddyDisco. That's on Blue Sky, Instagram, Letterboxd. You can hear my show, Spectre Cinema Club, new episodes every Tuesday. February, we're finishing up Black Final Girls before going into an all David Cronenberg month in March.
Ooh.
And then you can find Tainted Love, new episodes every other Wednesday, horror movies focused on sex, relationships, and romance. Apropos, in honor of David Lynch, we're covering Wild at Heart on the show. That'll be a very fun one to talk about. So that's every other Wednesday at Tainted Love Pod on social media, and Spectre Cinema Club is at Spectre Cinema. And you can also hear me as a rotating co-host on the Pod and Pendulum, where we cover franchises one movie at a time. We're finishing up the Exorcist series currently. So go listen to my defense. I say defense in quotes, light defense of Exorcist 2, The Heretic.
The Locusts. Love it. I love it. Amazing. Devon, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course.
And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. And one more time, a huge thank you to my incredible guest, Devon Taylor. That was so much fun. I loved getting to deep dive into that movie. So glad that I gave it another watch and I got the chance to talk about it properly, because it really has gone up in my estimation. Loved it. Now, let me know what you thought. Drop me a message. You can email me, evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find us on the socials, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on Blue Sky as well. And of course, you can follow us on Letterboxd. If you want to support this podcast and get treated to regular bonus episodes, particularly as we're about to go on a hiatus here on the main feed, sign up to our Patreon. If you sign up at the $10 per month level, you will get access to a back catalogue of over 300 episodes, including exclusive mini-seasons, director retrospectives, all kinds of other things, and you'll get a brand new episode while we are off the air every single week. Just head on over to patreon.com/Evolution of Horror. You can find this podcast in all the usual podcast places, and if you get a spare minute, I'd be so grateful if you could drop us a little rating and review on your podcast app of choice, as that always really helps us get discovered by new listeners. Well, that's it. We've done it. There are no more films to discuss in our Nature Bites Back season, so all that's left is to have a little look back at what we've learned and conclude this season. So next week, Mary Wild is going to be dropping in for a quick wrap-up chat about this season, and other than that, I am going to be looking back at the last 100 years of Nature Bites Back movies. I'm going to be reading and responding to listener feedback and emails, and I am going to be counting down your top 10 Nature Bites Back movies. Join us next week for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.